Hello there everyone and welcome to our next adventure with me, Jason. So let's dive right into today's video. On my screen over here, you can see that I have what's known as a tier list, right? Starting from S being supreme, super, superior, or in our case, because it's about Virgin Voyages, Scarlet, okay? And because of that, I've made it red. And then you can see going all the way down, we have a more familiar grading system. A plus, A minus, B, C, D, and of course E. And you'll notice it starts kind of getting low on energy and then eventually kind of feeling a bit green, seasick until you're blue, like the water, right? Because it's a cruise ship, so I had a little bit of fun, excuse me for that, in terms of making the colors here. Now, I'm going to be doing a general ranking of all the sailings that I've done up until today with Virgin Voyages. So there's several of them, and I'm going to go from the first one I ever did up until the most recent one that I did. Now, when I say general ranking, what I mean is that I'll be doing this from a point of view not of my personal experience, but sort of kind of removing my own experience from my thoughts and comments about this sailing, sort of like the default basic setting of the sailing, right? And I'll do another video in the future where I take the same sailings and I then do my own personal experience of it, right? Because the difference would be is that I research like crazy when it comes to these things. So, I'm doing in like tons of time and effort and looking at like, oh, can I do this, but do it for less, etc. So really like stretching your dollar and also kind of making the most out of all the time that I have when I'm in the port. So anyway, without further ado, let's begin. Right, the first sailing that I did was the Summer Sunset and Soiree. And that was a 4-night sailing leaving from Miami, and it was a round trip one. It goes to Key West and Bimini, where Virgin has their beach club. Now, something that's also of note is, of course, it leaves from Miami, which means that to get a flight there, whether you're a US domestic traveler or you're perhaps from outside the US, is usually pretty easy because you're basically flying into one of the most popular destinations in the US. And then, of course, to get from Miami International, at least, to Terminal V, Virgin's home turf terminal, so to speak, at the port of Miami, is about a 10-minute Uber or taxi. So it's really convenient. Now, as far as where this would fall in, all of my rankings, by the way, I give them the benefit of the doubt and start in the S tier. And then if they need to move down, I explain why. In this case, there's kind of a fundamental issue with the sailing and pretty much any sailing that's going to be shorter than 6 nights. And that is that Virgin's offer is that they're saying, hey, you get our included dining, premium dining, that is, for all dinner options when you book with us. Now, what that means is that on a 4-night sailing, if there are 6 premium dining options for dinner, which there are, you can only ever really get 4 out of the 6, unless you try and like double dip or something, like you go to your restaurant reservation, you eat, and then like later on you try and do like a walk-in. But I really wouldn't recommend that because probably not going to feel so great and it's just not worth it. So it kind of sucks that, you're going to have 4 out of the 6 done, which means you're not really going to get their full product in that kind of sense, if it makes any sense to you. And then another thing is that, it's a short sailing, which is great when you're trying to get some paid time off or a last minute vacation. And of course, on the budget, it's usually really great because usually the shorter the sailing, the overall cheaper or less expensive, rather, the cost of that sailing would be because it's less days. Not usually on a per night basis, but overall total. Um, However, the problem here is similar to the dining. You have obviously all the shows and entertainment on board, not to mention the facilities that the ship has to offer. And I think as a first time sailor, you're definitely not going to have enough time to explore and generally make use of everything that the ship has to offer you, because you're going to be so busy between the ports and all the other activities going on. And then, not to mention, when it comes to the main shows and events, you probably are going to find yourself either having to pick between 2 favorites that you kind of want to see or do, or they might overlap, so you might have to leave halfway through. Okay. And another consideration is that, well, what if you are exhausted or not feeling great, or you're sick, or maybe even injured, right? All the seas are really rough and they have to cancel, postpone that particular event you're going to see, especially like the bigger events, the main ones. So that means that now it's going to get pushed somewhere later in your itinerary. And that kind of sucks because now you're definitely going to have to try to squeeze it in if you're going to want to see it. On the flip side of the same coin, there are performers that are, giving you this amazing show that you're about to see, and they can get sick too. So if they're sick or, the seas are too rough for them to perform, then Virgin might have to cancel that. It means you're just got a kind of a high risk of missing a show. And I speak from experience there. It happened to me on this actual sailing itself. So it can kind of suck. But I still think that it's a great sailing, despite how short it is and kind of some of these sort of fundamental shortcomings. Nonetheless, I think it's amazing, and I totally appreciate that being able to get a short amount of time off is a lot easier than taking a longer period of time off, which makes it kind of more manageable for people. Okay, second sailing that I did was the Eastern Caribbean Antilles. This was an 8-night sailing, again round trip from Miami, so I won't repeat myself there. Because it's 8-night, that really meant that you were able to go to every single dinner option that they had as a premium dining option, right? Plus you could go to 2 of them at least twice, if you kind of look at it that way. So you could experience their sort of full product range as far as the premium dining was concerned, which is included already in your fare. Not to mention, whereas the previous one, there could be issues with cancellations of shows and having to pick favorites between the main shows. This one will have more than enough time to go and check out everything the ship has to offer, as well as the main shows, especially if, maybe there's just rough seas the one night, which seldom happens, by the way, at least in my experience. Or you're just not feeling well, you're tired and you kind of want to take a rest. It's all good. Probably is going to be scheduled again some other time in the itinerary. So you should be able to sort of have a nice balance of things that you want to do and see. As far as the ports are concerned, it goes to Puerto Plata in the Dominican Republic, which is a great port, I think. It goes to San Juan, Puerto Rico, which I think is one of the best ports, so that's awesome. It goes to St. Croix in the US Virgin Islands, which is a beautiful Caribbean island, great for a beach day and sort of meandering around or exploring the other side of it. And then again, Beach Club at Bimini, there's very little you can complain when you're going to go to Bimini. You just got to hope the weather's good. But nonetheless, this is probably the best sailing, I think, objectively speaking, for anyone, a veteran or virgin or a newcomer. I highly recommend you go on it if you're able to get the time off and, fit it into your schedule. Third one that I went on was the Irresistible Med. Now, something to be aware of here, there are 2 versions of this. There's this version, which is kind of the more common one, where you go to Marina di Carrera in Italy. There's another version where everything's the same, except you go to La Spezia in Italy. I strongly recommend, if you can, and it fits your schedule and the time of year that you're wanting to go, and it's an option, go for the one that has La Spezia, but more on that later. This one leaves from Barcelona in Spain. And again, it's kind of similar to Miami in terms of like ease of getting there. So if you're obviously in Europe, it's a very popular airport to travel to and city to travel to. So that shouldn't be such a problem. And even if you're from the US, it's kind of like the equivalent of someone from outside the US traveling to Miami. It's really easy to get there. And not to mention taking a taxi from the airport to the cruise terminal, probably around 20 minutes maximum. It's really convenient and there's seldom any traffic. So that's a nice big win. Now, in terms of the number of nights, it's 7, so you can do the usual sort of thinking I have about entertainment and dining and exploring the ship. Same thing still applies here. Now, what I will comment on, and unfortunately in this case, is that this is a sailing that required a lot of planning and effort from my side in order to make it great. And that's kind of down to the fact that the ports, for the most part, are not the most exciting. They're not kind of the obvious ones, if you put it that way. So for example, the first one you go to, Toulon in France, beautiful seaside town, but and has some historical significance with Napoleon. But other than that, it's not such an obvious port as to what you should do there. So make sure you check out the video that I'll do on each of these individual sailings, especially for this one, in order to really save yourself tons of time and have a great time on the sailing. Then there's Marina di Carrera. I personally hate this port. It's the worst one that Virgin, I think, currently offer. I think Virgin has a lot that they could still do on their side to make the baseline experience of this a little bit more manageable. But until they do that, I really think it's a terrible port. And you'll want to watch my video where I explain why. So go check that out when it comes out. But yeah, terrible port. Ajaccio in Corsica, again, very beautiful, very quaint, lovely, easy to walk around, and you have more than enough time to do anything that you want to do there. But it just, again, nothing screams out, although birthplace of Napoleon, so it's pretty cool. This should really be a Napoleonic cruise, if anything, but that's beside the point. The last place you're going to go to is Ibiza, and that's going to be awesome. You do an overnight there, so you get there around 7 p.m., leave the next day, I think, at around 5 p.m. And so you can experience the infamous Ibiza club and nightlife if that's what you want to do, or just explore Old Town. It's really stunning. But make sure whatever you do, you rally if you go too hard the night before to really make the most out of your daytime in Ibiza, because it is so, so, so beautiful. You just don't want to miss out on that. Trust me. So as far as this one ranks, you know, I really wish I could put it high up, but honestly, like I said, I had to put in so much time and effort to make this such a great sailing. And yeah, the ports just aren't that great. And Marina de Carrera really, really, really brings us down. Trust me, make sure you watch this particular one's video when it comes out. It's going to help you a fortune. But yeah, unfortunately, it's going to go to the D section. Oh, by the way, Marina de Carrera, despite being one of the worst ports I think that Virgin offer, I had one of my best days ever there. So seriously, go watch it when it comes out. Okay, next one I did, Greek Island Glow. So this one leaves from Piraeus, which is in Athens. Now, I do that obviously because it's not really in Athens. This one kind of sucks from 2 points of view. One, convenience, because let's say you're arriving at the airport and you want to go stay in Piraeus before your cruise, or in Athens before your cruise. From Athens to Piraeus by taxi or whatever, it's going to take you around 20 to 30 minutes depending on which terminal they're leaving from, and it's, you know, traffic as well. And Piraeus, if you're going to go stay there before, it's not a great really or eventful place to stay at. And it's a 40-minute taxi ride from the airport to the cruise terminal at best, right? That's if there's no traffic. So it's just kind of out the way and a little bit annoying. So it loses a little bit of points there. The other part where it loses points in my view is that I think out of all the onboarding experiences I've had with all the different sailings, this one has always just been subpar. I don't know what it is, but despite both of the times me having priority boarding, I've just found that it's a really awful experience. You know, they just don't have a good setup there. It kind of feels like on the fly, temporary, because there's tents and stuff. It's not great. So that hurts us a lot. On the plus side, you're going to go to at least 3 of the most popular Greek destinations possible: Santorini, Rhodos or Rhodes, and Mykonos. On the flip side of that, you're going to go to Bodrum, which is pretty if you're going to go stay at a nice hotel for a bit, and it's inexpensive in that sense, but it's not a great port in my opinion, and that kind of sucks and brings it a bit down. Another factor that kind of weighs down on this is that Santorini and Mykonos, which you'll do an overnight at, by the way, and that's really lovely, is they're both tender ports. And for those of you who don't know what that means, it means that you're either going to have to take a lifeboat, or they get another ship, a third-party ship, free of charge, by the way, of course, to come and pick you up from your cruise ship and take you to the mainland. Why is that going to bring it down? Because when you're on vacation and when you're on a cruise, especially when you're at different ports, what's your biggest resource, right? Your most valuable resource, and kind of for your entire life. No mean to get philosophical there, but it's time. And so when you're doing these sort of necessary but annoying transit things, like getting from your ship to the mainland and then all the way back, maybe you forgot something or whatever, it's going to eat into your time at the port, and that sucks. And that's like at the best case scenario, because you have to book to get your tender time. So, maybe you get a late booking and that's like 12 o'clock, but you've been there since 8 a.m. So you lost like 4 hours where you could have been on the port because of unfortunate circumstances. Because of that, I have to, unfortunately, I think, bring this down to a B. I really wish I could rank it higher, but I just, you know what? I think a B is appropriate. Yeah. I was thinking about putting it as C actually, but I think B is a good spot for this. Watch the video on this. This was a particular sailing where I managed to save a fortune of money for different excursions and activities, etc., that I did whilst I was going to the different ports. So make sure you check that out. Next on my list was actually when I did a back-to-back from San Juan in February of 2024. The first one of the back-to-back was the sunsets in the Lesser Antilles. So like I said, it leaves from San Juan. It goes to Oranjestad, Aruba, Willemstad, Curacao, Fort-de-France, Martinique, and then Basse-Terre, St. Kitts. Now, all the ports I'd say range from good to great. Let's give it the benefit of the doubt and say great for the most part. The one that I'd say is like good is really Willemstad in Curacao. I think it looks a lot better than it actually is from a cruising point of view. Most of the awesome stuff or nice hotels and areas really that you want to go to when you're in Curacao on the far west of the island. But setting that aside, the main thing that brings us down really is that to get to San Juan, whether you're a mainland, domestic traveler from the US or you're from elsewhere in the world, it's a hassle. And it's not just a hassle because you're probably going to need to make a connecting flight unless you're on the east coast of the US or at like a major airlines travel hub. But you're going to have to get all the way there, and that takes a little bit more time. It's usually more expensive, which kind of sucks. But once you're there, getting from the airport to the cruise port, even simpler and quicker than Miami. So that's a nice upside. The other thing that kind of brings us down, but I'll give Virgin the benefit of the doubt here because it was their kind of first time really sailing from San Juan for a return trip. And both of those, by the way, are 7-night trips. Same with the Greek Island Glow and the Med one, which I spoke about earlier. Is that there just were like lines and people were out in the sun and it was really hot. Again, I didn't have that issue because the priority boarding setup there was a lot better than, for example, Piraeus. But, I am keeping that was something I saw happen both on my first sailing from San Juan and the one right after when I was looking at from the back of the ship. So I hope it's gotten better. But otherwise, an amazing, amazing sailing and great ports. I'm going to put that at an A-. Second last one that I've done so far, and the second of the back-to-back in February, was the Southeastern Caribbean Isles. This one, I'm going to tell you straight up, probably is going to be either A+ or A-, because firstly, the ports it went to were amazing, except for one. One was the absolute worst I've ever gone on with Virgin, except they've since removed it. So I'm removing that from my consideration. And by the way, that was Ponte Pitre in Guadalupe. So that's out of the picture now. But otherwise, it went to Tortola in the British Virgin Islands, which was incredible. It went to Castries in St. Lucia, beautiful. Where else did it go? St. John's in Antigua and Barbuda, like stunning. And then Bridgetown, Barbados, which is just like a happy, awesome place and just a beautiful island as well. So, needless to say, I'm going to have to give this an A+. And the only reason, again, that it really loses points here, because I've removed Guadeloupe from my consideration, is just the extra hassle of getting to San Juan in Puerto Rico. Now, last but not least, is the Adriatic Sea and Greek Gems. This one again leaves from Piraeus in Athens, so you can imagine where that's going to hurt the score a bit. But it goes to Split in Croatia as well as Dubrovnik in Croatia. Then you do the most beautiful sail into Kotor in Montenegro, and of course the sail out is equally beautiful. And then last but not least, before you head back, you stop in the really big island, I think one of the top 3 in terms of the size of the Greek islands, that is, in Corfu. Now, the place where this kind of loses points, aside from the Piraeus thing, right, is that number one, Kotor is a tender port, which again can suck depending on what time you get your time slot to go from the ship to the mainland in the beginning. And then also Corfu had a really, really suboptimal sort of logistics solution. So number one, you get off the ship, you walk about 6 to 8 minutes to where there's a bunch of buses that are sort of collecting everyone from the different ships. That then takes you to the entrance of the cruise port itself. From there, Virgin and pretty much every other cruise line has got dedicated shuttles with their different names on it that are waiting to take you to Old Town Corfu. Now, that all sounds great, except for the fact that these shuttles don't have really a specific time that they leave at. What actually happens is they do sort of the wait till we fill up or wait too long approach, right? So, if you happen to go at a not so busy time, you're going to essentially get on the bus and you're just going to sit there until the bus is reasonably full or it's just been a crazy amount of time since it's left. And that sucked because the aircon really just didn't work. So you're just sweating like crazy. It's so hot there. And then eventually you go on your journey, which takes around 20 plus minutes or so to get to Old Town. And of course, you still have to make it back. So all of that just kind of brought away from the experience because it was just not the greatest, use of your time to just sit and wait, and also really hot during the summer. And that's when all these sailings happen for the Med. So I think that's something that kind of brings it down a bit. And then also the other problem I have with the sailing is that you unfortunately do 4 ports in a row. Now that might sound like a really weird thing to pick at, but trust me, when it's, peak summer or just summer in general in the Mediterranean, and you want to, really get the most out of visiting all the ports that you're going to, because they're amazing, they're cool. Like, that kind of heat is so taxing on you. It's exhausting. So even if you take good care of yourself, you stay hydrated, you try and avoid unnecessary sun, etc., it's going to drain you, and that's, unfortunate. So because of that, and honestly because of Corfu, etc., I'm gonna have to put this at a C. So yeah, that's my tier list from a general point of view. This is not how I necessarily experienced all of them. Wait for the video on that to come out. And of course, if you're going on any one of these and you're interested to actually get a more deep dive overview on what I did, how I think you should plan the trip, etc., go and look out for the individual videos that I'll release on that. And otherwise, I hope you really enjoyed this and found it kind of fun and interactive and useful. I would really appreciate if you could subscribe. Give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Leave a comment, that would be awesome. If you have anything positive to say, or you agree with something, disagree, I don't mind. Constructive criticism is always good too. Just be respectful to each other and hopefully myself. And hit the notification bell as well, so that when the next video does come out, you don't miss out. Okay, other than that, have a great day. Cheers. Bye.